Now we are live. Uh, Good morning, everyone. And we are here for the presentation of Ellison's paper. Um, and the panel is formed by Dr. Denise Lambert and Dr. Alessandro Tatajiba. Dr. Denise Lambert is from Unipampa, and Dr. Alessandro Tatajiba is from the University of Brasilia. And Elyson will have about 20 minutes to make his presentation. And then the committee, the examining committee, is going to interact with him for a couple of hours. I'm joking. Okay, Elyson, the floor is yours.
All right. So, good morning, Dr. Denise, Dr. Alessandro, and Dr. Newton. My name is Elyson, and today I am going to defend my final work, The Pedagogical Use of Audio Description for Additional Language Teaching, Literature Review. So, my research begins from a constant search for innovative pedagogical tools. And it's within this context that auto description emerges as a promising tool. Auto description is an accessibility tool for blind people or people who have low vision. And the main purpose of auto description is to translate visual information into verbal language to help visually impaired people understand what is happening in audiovisual materials. Despite its purpose is accessibility, some researchers used auto description as a pedagogical tool for language learning. But while this idea seems promising, I found a critical gap, which is there is no systematic analysis of auto description's pedagogical methodologies. And from that situation, some central questions emerged, like how is auto description being implemented in real classrooms, and why is it effective? So this is the gap my research tries to fill here. The main objective of my work is to systematically reveal and synthesize the empirical literature on the pedagogical use of auto description in additional language learning contexts. And to achieve this goal, I set some key research questions. For example, I aimed to investigate the auto description task designs, material selection criteria, pedagogical rationale, scaffolding techniques, curricular integration, and its assessment methods. By answering all of those questions, I was able to deconstruct the pedagogical architecture of auto description. To analyze the literature, I selected those 6 foundational theories. And throughout my research, I realized that no single theory could fully explain the complexity of auto description tasks. So I decided to synthesize those 6 theories into a single integrated theoretical model with 3 principles. The first one is the multimodal mediation principle that integrates Piva's dual coding theory with Vygotsky's social cultural theory, framing auto description as a cognitive and social mediation. The second one is the cyclical input-output principle that integrates Krashen's input hypothesis with Swain's output hypothesis, framing auto description as a complete learning loop of input, output, and feedback. And the third one is the ecological scaffolding principle that integrates Vygotsky's zone of proximal development with Van Leer's ecological approach, framing auto description as an activity whose success is entirely dependent on the careful design of its learning environment. To answer my research questions, I conducted a qualitative systematic review following Prisma 2020 guidelines. For data sources, I used EDIC, CAPS, and Google Scholar, limiting my search to empirical studies published between 2015 and 2024. The eligibility criteria were very strict, and I focused exclusively on empirical peer-reviewed studies that investigated auto description as a pedagogical tool for additional language learners. And for the analysis, the data extracted from the selected studies was synthesized using an inductive thematic analysis by Brown and Clark, which means that the themes in my discussion emerged from the data. And those themes were interpreted through my theoretical model. My study selection process followed the Prisma methodology. And to summarize the key numbers, the initial search identified 557 records. After removing 22 duplicates, 535 studies were screened by title and abstract. This left 23 studies for a full text assessment after 512 exclusion of studies. And in the end, a final set of 14 studies were included in the final qualitative synthesis. So with this solid evidence base established, now we can go to the findings. My research reveals that an effective auto-description pedagogy is a deliberately constructed architecture composed of 6 fundamental interconnected components, which, as you can see here in this picture. And each component represents a set of conscious pedagogical decisions made by the researchers. So over the next few slides, I will deconstruct this architecture, showing the findings of each of these components one by one. So let's start with the task designs. I found 3 types of task designs. The first one is the individual task, where learners worked alone, either writing script, audio recording, or both. And this design validates the cognitive dimension of the multimodal mediation principle, because by working alone, the learner becomes the sole mediator between the visual information and verbal language, creating an application of Paiva's dual coding theory here. The second one is the collaborative task, where learners worked in pairs or in small groups to co-create a single audio description script, validating the social dimension of the multimodal mediation principle, because here the mediation is not just cognitive, it's social. It happens between the students. And this is aligns with Vygotsky's social cultural theory. And the third one is the sequential task, where learners had an audio description experience as a pedagogical progression from simpler to more complex tasks, validating the ecological scaffolding principle, because here the learning environment is engineered to provide more complex challenges only after foundational skills are established. For material selection, I found 3 criteria. The first one is the cognitive load management, which means that researchers chose simple short materials to take the task manageable, validating the ecological scaffolding principle, because by simplifying the auditory environment and reducing the duration, it lowers what Meyer calls the extraneous cognitive load of the students, allowing them to focus on the core task of mediation. The second criteria is ensuring rich input, which means that researchers chose materials that were visually dense and attractive, offering rich details and clear actions, validating the multimodal mediation principle here, because a visually rich input is the necessary raw material for a meaningful mediation task. As Paiva suggests here, you cannot build a strong link between visual and verbal channels if the visual channel is providing a weak or uninteresting information. And the third criteria is enhancing motivation, which means that researchers chose materials for their cultural relevance and authenticity for the learners, validating the cyclical input-output principle. Because according to Kroshen, a motivated learner is more likely to invest the effort needed to provide a high quality description and to be more receptive to feedback. About the pedagogical rationale, I found three that explains why researchers used auto description as a pedagogical tool for language learning. The first reason is that auto description is a catalyst for authentic communication that transforms learners into active social agents who use the language to accomplish a real world communicative task, which leads to a purposeful output, validating the cyclical input output principle, because this purposeful output is the very engine of Swain's output hypothesis, which argues that we learn a language most effectively when we are pushed to use it to convey a meaningful message. The second reason is that auto description is a quintessential mediation task, validating the multimodal mediation principle, because in auto description tasks, learners do a cognitive mediation between two different systems of communication, verbal and visual systems. And they don't do it for themselves. Actually, they do it for an audience that cannot see visual content. And this factor frames auto description not only as a cognitive mediation, but also as a social mediation. And this transforms auto description task into a social cognitive act of building bridges and creating access to information for others. And the third reason is that auto description is a vehicle for holistic skills development, which means that auto description is a complex performance that naturally combines multiple competences. For example, in auto description task, learners must simultaneously read the scene, write the script, speak the narration, listen to the timing, all while using digital tools, which improves also technological skills. So this validates the ecological scaffolding principle, because here it shows that a well-designed auto description environment provides affordances to the development of multiple skills. About the scaffolding techniques, I found a sophisticated three-stage scaffolding system. The first stage is the preparatory scaffolding. Here, the studies showed instructors equipping learners with the necessary tools and knowledge up front, including activities like introductory workshops on auto description, pre-teaching key vocabulary, or providing model examples for analysis. And this validates the ecological scaffolding principle, because this part prepares the learners and activates their zone of proximal development, ensuring that the main task, when the main task begins, the student is positioned to success. The second stage is the procedural scaffolding. Here, the studies showed a clear pattern of structuring the task environment itself to reduce cognitive load and guides the process, which was achieved by using dedicated softwares, breaking down complex videos into smaller, manageable steps, and providing clear step-by-step instructions, validating also the ecological scaffolding principle, because this part is the representation of environmental engineering, where the task's ecosystem is well designed to guide the learners. And the third stage is the reflective scaffolding, which here the studies created opportunities for feedback and self-evaluation. This included peer and teacher feedback, rubrics for assessments, and having students compare their own works with a professional auto description script. Validated the cyclical input-output principle, because here the learner's output is immediately met with a new highly relevant input, which is the feedback or the model script. And this forces the learners to engage in the crucial cognitive functions of noticing gaps between their words and the target, and hypothesis retesting for their next attempt, which are the core learning mechanisms in Swain's theory. About the curricular integration, I found three models. The first one is the fully embedded model. Here, the audio description task is not a separate room. It's built into the foundations of a core compulsory course, which means that the learning objectives of audio description task and the course are fused, creating a continuous reinforcement. The second one is the standalone course model, which creates a dedicated but isolated micro ecosystem for audio description, being totally disconnected from the daily traffic of the main curriculum. And the third one is the extracurricular model, which functions like a temporary pop-up workshop or as a self-study booth, which gives the students flexibility and autonomy, but lacks the structural support and legitimacy of being part of the main building. So the literature, particularly comparative studies like Moreno and Vermelho 2021, showed that the fully embedded model is the most effective integration, validating the scaffolding, the ecological scaffolding principle, because when a task is a core part of a compulsory course, it is given relevance and legitimacy, creating a learning ecosystem more richer and motivating for the students. And finally, about the assessment methods, I found three types. The first one is the direct assessment, which included analysis of the linguistic output using detailed rubrics, focusing on the evaluation of accuracy, fluency, lexical richness, and pronunciation. And this one validates the cyclical input-output principle because this assessment gives a concrete evaluation of the learner's output, measuring how successfully the student has navigated the entire process from input to production. The second one is the perception-based assessment. This one was the most common method, using pre and post questionnaires to capture the learner's attitudes, their motivation, perceived difficulties, test enjoyment, and their self-confidence. And this one validates the ecological scaffolding principle because this method assesses the effectiveness of the learning ecosystem from the most important perspective, which is the learner's perspective. As Van Leer would argue here, a learning environment is only successful if it's perceived as supportive and motivating by the person within it. And the third one is the pre and post test designs that use formal tests before and after the interventions to objectively quantify learning gains of the students. And this one validates my entire theoretical model here, because these designs didn't assess specific tasks or specific perceptions, but they assessed the entire learning experience, being able to show that the combination of the three principles can lead to real measurable improvements of the learner's language skills. Throughout my analysis, I found some research gaps and limitations. The first one is the methodological constraints, which shows that most studies relied on small non-representative samples, which means that while these studies provided incredibly rich qualitative insights, their small scale limited the statistical generalizability of the findings, pointing to a clear need for more longitudinal studies to measure the long-term effects of audio description. The second one, it was a pedagogical gap. Here it shows that the body of the research of the 14 studies overwhelmingly focused on one specific demographic, university students in European contexts. So we had very little data showing the implementation of audio description for beginners and young learners in primary or secondary education. And the third one is the technical and practical challenges. For example, researchers like Navarre reported significantly difficulties with software bugs in the Clipflare platforms. Moren and Vermeulen showed significant difficulties at navigating on the VISP mobile application, and also appeared logistical problems with coordinating pairs of students for collaborative work. So here we can see that the learning environment is not only a pedagogical idea, but also a social technical reality, because if technology fails or logistics are too complex, the entire learning architecture can collapse, and we have to be careful for future research. So, what is the final picture that emerges from my research? First, we can conclude that audio description is a comprehensive pedagogical framework because, as my findings showed, its implementation is not random. It's a consistent and repeatable system of task designs, material selection, scaffolding, and assessment. Second, its effectiveness emerges from a deliberately constructed learning architecture because the positive results seen in the studies are not accidental. They are a direct result of conscious pedagogical choices, which means that the success is totally engineered. Third, this architecture is validated by the three principles of the theoretical model, because the model shows us that the architecture is effective because it is built on a foundation of a social cognitive mediation. It is powered by a cyclical learning process, and it is sustained by a supportive learning ecosystem. And this leads us to the path forward, which is to expand research to diverse populations, because as I showed in the research gaps and limitations, the auto description task was only implemented into a specific context with a specific group of students, university students in European context. And I think there is a necessity for the implementation of the audio description design in audio context. For example, in private schools, in public schools, with beginner students, with high school students. So I think it would be a good idea to see how my theoretical model works in those different contexts. Well, so those are my references that I used to make my work, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Elyson. Thank you very much indeed for your presentation. A very clear presentation. And now let's move on to the next phase, which is the interaction with the examiners. And we have Dr. Denise Lambert and Dr. Alessandro Tatashiba. Let's start perhaps with Dr. Lambert, and she'll have now the floor to interact with you.
Okay, so, well, first of all, congratulations, Elyson, for your work. And I would like to thank Professor Newton for inviting me to be part to compose this examining board. And, well, I'm going to talk a little bit about your work, okay, your research. And then I have some comments and some suggestions and some questions as well. Okay. So first of all, I want to say that your research, your paper is very well written. Okay. Congratulations for the research. The language is very clear, and the way you lead the reader to the results and through all the methodology and all the steps of your research, they are very clear. Okay, so it's a very good text to read. So congratulations to you and to Professor Newton. Okay, it seems that there was a very careful review also. Okay, so in the original file, I made some comments, but they are very little. Okay, it's like some very little corrections. So congratulations for the writing, okay, and for the research. And I think it's a very relevant topic as well. So especially for this 21st century, right? The time we are living. So we need these different approaches, different methodology for English and other languages, additional languages teaching. So I think it brings more information. It brings more sources for teachers to use in their classes. Okay, so it's a very relevant topic. I learned a lot reading your study, your research. Okay, so congratulations. I really like the use of the tables because they help understanding and systematizing the information. Okay, so I am like in my writings, I really like to use tables and charts and all these sources we have to make information like readable for the readers. Okay, so congratulations. Okay, it's very clear. As I said, you lead the reader through the steps of the research. Okay, you give details about how you chose the studies and how you analyze them. So how the information came from your data. Okay, so this is very clear. And also the way you analyzed the data, it was very detailed and very careful. Okay, so it seems that you really read those studies you found, you chose those 14 studies you chose. You really read them carefully and analyzed them and saw what you could see like from them and the relationship between the 14 studies also. Okay, so you could compile them and find similarities and differences. So it was a very good way to lead the research. And also the connection between the theoretical framework and the data and the analysis. So this is very well done in your paper. Okay. And you always make this relationship when you are analyzing the data, you always make this relationship between the theory and the analysis of the data, right? So it was a very good research. Okay. And about your presentation, I made some comments here. So very beautiful slides, very clear presentation. You could concise all the information from your paper into very didactic slides, very didactic images and like core information you chose to put it on your slides. So also congratulations for that. Okay. And I have some comments, right, and some suggestions here. So I have a doubt, but I think you solved my doubt a little bit in this presentation about the theoretical framework. On page 10, you say that the pedagogical application of audio description in additional language learning represents a convergence of multiple theoretical traditions that, when integrated, offer a comprehensive understanding of how multimodal tasks facilitate language acquisition. Rather than treating these perspectives as isolated frameworks, this study proposes a synthetic theoretical model that draws upon 6 complementary theories: Pivot's dual coding theory, Krashen's input hypothesis, Vygotsky's social cultural theory, Mayer's cognitive Mayer cognitive theory and multimedia learning, Swain's output hypothesis, and Van Lier's or Lear's, I don't know, ecological approach to language learning. And then, okay, so you researched about all these six complementary theories, and then you synthesize them into three, right?
Yeah.
That is the multimodal mediation principle, cyclical input-output integration principle, and ecological scaffolding principle. My question is, these three, the six theories that became three, like you combine them into three, did you do it yourself, or is it presented in other works, other studies, other research for audio description methodology? This is a question, if you would like to answer.
Well, I did it myself because when I was analyzing the information, I noticed that it was much information for me, and the problem, it was not lack of data, but it was lack of synthesis of those much information. The 14 studies showed that the audio description is effective, but I was not seeing why and how is auto description is effective. So I tried to explain this, analyzing the data separately. For example, the individual task supports the Pivot's dual coding theory, the collaborative Vygotsky, but at the end I noticed that I was just making differences between the data. I was not synthesize them as a pattern. So I thought, well, so let's see the pattern. So what is happening in all those different contexts? For example, the first principle, the multimodal mediation. I realized that it had individual and collaborative task, and in both, the essential task that the students were doing was the mediation. So they were working as a bridge. So I thought, so I think the main task of auto description is not just practicing pronunciation or just speaking or just writing or creating script, but the mediation. And the mediation transforms the learners into a linguistic and social mediator, because they do a cognitive mediation between the images and words, and also they do a social mediation between the visual words and its audience that cannot see visual content, and it makes communication. So the students are not just practicing skills; they are being a bridge, helping a specific group understand something that they cannot see, creating a real communication. So with this idea, it came my first principle, the multimodal mediation principle. The second principle, for example, the cyclical input output, it came because among the data, I noticed that the most effective studies used not a one-way street from input to output, but they implemented input, output, and feedback with comparing the works of the students with audio description, original audio description, with peer feedback, teacher feedback. So I noticed that the learning process is not a one-way street, but a cyclical learning process. And I created the cyclical input-output principle. And the last one, the ecological scaffolding principle, I created because I noticed that the learners were very careful about the engineering the environment. So they were always choosing short clips, dividing the clips into different parts to avoid the cognitive overload of the students. They were worried about the presentation of audio description. So some studies make workshops on the audio description principles. So I realized that the learning process to be well done, it has to have a good learning environment, ecological scaffolding environment.
Okay. So congratulations again, Elyson, for doing that. Okay, so I think you created something really new here, right? So you created a theory for audio description pedagogy or approach, methodology, whatever. Okay, so and it fitted really well, right? So, and you explain very well that in your research, in your paper, how these three combinations, like these three theory, they are very connected to the audio description pedagogy. So congratulations for doing that, right? So I think it's going to be a benchmark for your research and for the audio description research as well. So congratulations for creating that. And that's why it was my question, right? It was it something that was already in the literature or something you created from your research? So it's answered. Okay. Well, I have some suggestions for your final writing. Okay, and one of them is that the objective and the questions, the research questions, they should be more clear, and they should be more in the beginning of the, I think maybe in the introduction, okay? Because you have on page 8, you list some questions, right? But they are not, at least not for me, they're not clear if they were the research questions. When you were presenting, I could understand that, yes, they were the leading questions to your analysis, okay? So it's just to, if they are the research questions, just make it more clear in the paper, okay? Because then on page 8, let me go there and see how you write that. You say, when you start the questions, you say, before the questions, there is a sentence. The variety of practical applications suggested by preliminary findings raises crucial questions that have remained underexplored regarding the specifics of pedagogical application. For instance, and then you list those questions, okay? Mm-hmm. But then it's not clear if they are the research questions. And then when you go to chapter 4, which is on page, let me go there. I made some comments, okay, on your paper, and I'm going to send you the comments. So don't worry about taking notes, because everything I'm saying, it's written here somewhere. Okay. Okay. In chapter 4, in the beginning, you say, this chapter transitions from the theoretical foundation of AD as a pedagogical tool to a systematic analysis of its practical application in the field. By synthesizing the findings from 14 empirical studies, this section provides a comprehensive answer to the central research question: how is AD being implemented in the language learning contexts, and why is it effective? So here is the central question of your research. So it should be in the introduction, my opinion. Okay, so then you can discuss with Professor Newton if you're going to do that or not. Okay, but maybe this central question should be together with the other questions you brought in the introduction part. Okay, so to make clear that there is this central question you want to answer, and the other like specific questions that you also want to answer and you answered during your research. Okay, so it's just a matter of making it clear, since this is a research paper, okay, the research question and the objectives. Okay, just that. This is something I like to do, but I don't know if it's your style or not. Okay, so that's something you're going to discuss with Professor Newton, as I said. Okay, so how is the objective connected to the research questions and so on? Okay, so this is my suggestion. Another suggestion I have, um, when you create the tables, um, sometimes you say created by the author, and sometimes you use elaborated by the author. Both are correct. Okay, so you just have to choose one to keep the parallelism. Okay, so to make it standard, right? So you can just choose one. And something else is like when you are analyzing the data, okay, from the 14 studies, you say like most of the studies, a vast majority, many studies, a significant number of studies. I suggest you using the number. Is it like 10 out of 14, 8 out of 14? What is majority? What is the vast majority? Is it 13? Is it 12? Right? So I think you can keep those expressions like a vast majority, but I suggest you also put maybe in parentheses the number, okay? Because you are analyzing 14 studies. So what is the majority of 14? What is a significant number? Okay, so I think it's more precise if you use the number. Very simple. Okay, so that's my suggestion. And in the conclusion, you mentioned that there should be more quantitative research about the use of audio description pedagogy. And then you say that qualitative research maybe doesn't bring, like, you cannot generalize so much, right, when you use qualitative research. But I think that one is not the opposite of the other. That's not what I believe. Okay, I think they complement each other. So maybe for future studies, you can use more quantitative like data, but also use qualitative data. I think they complement each other. They bring richness to your research. Okay, so the way you put there, it seems that you are maybe devalidating what you have done, which is really good, right? What you did is very innovative. It's really um, like you really researched about that. So maybe you can just change a little bit and bring like, okay, the quantitative research can bring more uh, like generalization for the topic, right? But the qualitative research is also important. So maybe a mix of methods can be very rich to your research. Okay. And also for future studies, I suggest maybe developing and applying audio description tasks and analyzing the results together with like more research. As you said, like in other contexts, maybe with other languages, maybe with a school environment, like beginners. So there is a vast uh, like field that you can explore using audio description pedagogy. So yes, you can like move forward, and I suggest you like think about it in future studies, like I don't know, maybe a master's, right, to continue this methodology and this study. And I have some questions also about your experience. Okay, so what is your experience in teaching additional languages? And have you ever used audio description pedagogy, or have you ever used audio description tasks in your classes? So it's a question I would like you to answer.
Well, as a teacher, I tried to I tried to use a very easy audio description. Like, uh, for example, I tried to make my students describe static images to see how it works. And I told them to imagine, oh, you are describing this picture for someone that cannot see visual content. So try to think like that, and try to think about the words you will use to make the other understand what is happening on the picture. And I it was very funny because I put one student to describe, and I put the other not seeing the picture. So I put like uh, in the back, not in front of the picture, but in the back side, like not seeing the picture. And the describer just say, "Oh, so there is the objects. There is and in the picture there is a person sweeping the floor or washing the dishes," and the person who was listening just trying to create the image in their minds. And after that, I just asked the students to create a picture. What they thought about the image. How is the image like? So they draw, and we compared the drawing with the real picture. And it was fantastic because the drawing was very similar to the picture, because the describer managed to pass the real picture of the image. This was one of the experience that I had with auto description. But I used static images because the learners were beginners. So I tried to A2 level. So they were able to use, for example, present continuous to say what is happening, and they had some vocabulary. And I chose a picture that had objects that I know that the students will know the name of the object. So I thought like that. I was worried about the learning environment to not to make the students anxious, like to have a good result.
Okay, very good. You know that when I was reading your paper, I also thought about this activity that I used to do with my students, like especially beginners. That it was the picture dictation, right? That they had to dictate this picture very detailed, and the other student had to draw that. And at Unipampa, we have a very good source of material that we got from the American Embassy, that um, a landscape and lots of different elements, and the name of the elements, like for example tree or animal, like I don't know, like a frog, they are written inside the image, but it's not very clear to see, like the word written in the picture. So it helped the students to with the vocabulary, so they could describe better, like when there is like a rock, there is the word rock is written in that object, right? But it's not very like clear. It's like it mixes with the picture, right? So it's a very interesting material to do that, like to describe the picture. So yes, I thought about it when I was reading your paper, right? So well, I think it's that, right? I'm going to send you the document with my comments, okay, that you can analyze with Professor Newton and see what you're going to change or not. But again, congratulations, right, for your research. Congratulations for this innovative research that you brought, okay, that it's probably going to be like it's going to help other people who study and develop audio description tasks and pedagogy to have um, this like base, this theoretical base that fits very well with this pedagogy. So congratulations again, and thank you for the invitation.
Teacher, your microphone.
All right, all right. My microphone, yes. Thank you, Professor Lamberts, for your comments, and we'll discuss with Elyson all of your comments. I'm sure you're going to send them by email. And now we'll hear Professor Alessandro Tatashiba, who is going to also to interact with Elyson. Please, Doctor.
Okay, good morning again. Thank you, Dr. Newton, for the invitation. It's a great pleasure to me to be with you and Dr. Lambert and learn from the work of Mr. Silva. First of all, I commend Elyson for the high level of the academic work and the methodological approach and of this work, which clearly exceeds the expectations for an undergraduate degree. From my point of view and experience, it's a rare and a wonderful opportunity to have an academic advisor that allows you to go beyond the common theoretical approach of they are used to. So I think, Mr. Silva, you picked you had the right academic advisor that allowed you to speak your mind, to do such a comprehensive work. Of course, Mr. Lambert did the right comments and asked the questions that you already answered. And I agree with Mr. Lambert. You should precise the number instead of using majority, a great number of student studies. And the other suggestion Mr. Lambert did was very precise, and I totally agree. So my questions, Mr. Elyson, from your point of view, how feasible is audio description for beginner learners at A1 and A2 levels, given the potential for cognitive overload? And the second, what's the, speak from your heart, what do you think? What's the ideal balance for assessment? Should it focus more on final product, which is the script, or on the student reflective process? Please.
Okay. The first one, how feasible? Well, it's a very difficult question because my theoretical model was built on a specific context, right? The context of those 14 studies. And I have an idea, the implementation of my theoretical model for beginners, especially the ecological scaffolding principle, because as you said, um, there is the cognitive load of the students, and I know that the cognitive load of beginners are bigger than the cognitive load of intermediate and advanced learners. So the beginners doesn't have much vocabulary. So I think that auto description could be feasible if I implemented it, if I would implement the auto description. Um, if if I first start with statistic images, like I showed to Dr. Lamberts my experience, to first start with statistic images, and and um, and starting with asking the students to describe simple things, not the whole picture. Like, let's see what objects we have in the picture. So let's see, blah blah blah. Or the actions, what is happening on the picture, just like that. Not the whole thing, what is happening in the picture. I think it would avoid the cognitive overload of the students. Starting by that, um, and of course, I would have to think about the learning environment, because auto description involves technology things. So I would see the if it has a TV, or if they would just use computers, or the cell phone. So I think it first has to think about the support thing, to make the the process easy for the students, to avoid the cognitive overload. And after that, it would increase the difficulty, but because in my study we had sequential tasks. So first uh, begins with simple images, describe just the objects, after just the actions, and at the end we would get the whole picture, describe the objects, the actions, what is happening in the whole picture. And after that, I could bring a simple video, a short video with no dialogues, just image what is happening on the video. And after that, I would increment the difficulties of the students. I think that's the way that we avoid the overload of the cognitive of the students. Um, the second question.
Yes.
Um,
Would you like me to repeat the second question?
yes, I forgot.
Yes. uh, so, from your point of view, what's the ideal balance for assessment? Should it focus more on the final product, which is the script, or this on the student reflective process? Of course, you during this process of writing such a wonderful paper, and and researching, reading many authors, you got a picture of yours from your point of view. Please talk about uh, this.
Okay. Well, I think that the ideal balance between both is that I think we have to transform the students, not just for analyzing their production, just if they use the correct vocabulary, or if they had a good pronunciation, or like that. I think the teacher has to convey the idea to the students that they are not just practicing, but they are working as a bridge between the visual world and its audience. And I think that way goes beyond practicing, but it makes the learners to be aware of intercultural competence. For example, they because if they are aware that they are a bridge between those two systems, between the visual world and the audience, they will think that they have to think about the words profoundly to convey the meaningful ideas about the visual content, the right words. For example, the expressions, that there are some expressions that the other group couldn't understand. So how would I make the bridge? I think it will stop students asking if I am pronunciating the word correctly or if my writing is good. No, I think with that idea, the students will start thinking, I am a good bridge. I am doing a right thing to be a good bridge between the visual content and the audience. I wonder if I am making clear that to make the other group understand what I'm trying to say. So I think those main questions will emerge if the students are reflective instead of just checking the pronunciation of the words or the grammar, etc. So I think that's the balance between both.
Thank you. I think you just said it goes, it fits well with Van Leyen when he says that scaffolding is not just to support, but to expand and optimize the affordance. So thank you, Mr. Silva, for your response. And thank you for the opportunity for learning, for your presentation. Congratulations.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, now the panel will go to a different room to talk about to assess the presentation, and then we'll come back. Então, estamos de volta, né? E tivemos uma conversa muito interessante. Daqui a pouco os examinadores vão até falar um pouquinho com você, Elyson. Mas eu não vou ler aqui a ata, mas eu vou dar o resultado. Né? Então, o trabalho do Elyson foi aprovado pela banca com nota máxima, que é a nota 10. Não é? Então, parabéns, Elyson, pela sua conquista. E eu vou passar agora a palavra para o professor Alessandro e depois a professora Denise, antes de finalizarmos.
Isso, muito obrigado, doutor Nilton, obrigado. Então, vou falar em português para conseguir falar com mais fluência, e é difícil, muitos dias sem falar inglês. Então, e ontem à noite nós tivemos uma reunião na despedida do embaixador do Japão. Eu fui bolsista no Japão, né? Então, foi tanto japonês ontem, falando japonês, que a mente está confusa hoje, está meio embaralhada. Mas vamos lá. Então, Elyson, nós comentamos, né, a respeito do seu trabalho, que é a nota máxima, e nós sugerimos, inclusive, que seja com a menção honrosa pela contribuição inédita que você fez, pela abordagem inédita. Isso é muito importante, essa autonomia de pensamento, de reflexão. Isso demonstra muita reflexão acerca do seu objeto de estudo, e essa proatividade é muito importante na ciência, porque senão nós vamos só reproduzir aquilo que está dito, certo? E eu já vi trabalhos de mestrado que não chegam ao nível do seu, de graduação. Então, é uma pena que não seja uma... Eu gostaria que estivesse ouvindo aqui. Vamos conferir o título de mestre ao Elyson por esse trabalho apresentado. Seria mais satisfatório. E a sugestão é que você e o professor Newton escrevam um livro, não apenas um artigo, mas transformem esse conteúdo em um livro, porque isso pode circular melhor no meio acadêmico, né? Um livro em inglês e português, uma versão em inglês, outra versão em português, com essas contribuições, com a contribuição teórica que a doutora Denise apontou muito bem, a metodologia de análise também, que a doutora Denise apontou, são pontos fortes para colocar neste livro. O segundo ponto, a doutora Denise pode falar melhor, é sobre a questão de futuros estudos. Por último, eu gostaria de falar assim, que sobre aquela pergunta sobre como avaliar estudantes de nível A1, A2, depois, se você puder dar uma olhadinha na teoria de avaliação, avaliação do traço latente. É que eu trabalhei muitos anos no INEP com a criação do Enem, com várias avaliações. Então, essa área de avaliação assim, é meu métier, né? Então, acho que vale a pena procurar na literatura metodologia de avaliação do traço latente. É claro que tem teorias como a teoria de resposta ao item, que é a que nós aplicamos no Enem, mas ela não é necessária para o seu caso, mas assim, para futuros estudos. Mas como é uma área que precisa avançar, acho que vale a pena, eu posso depois passar algumas referências, alguns livros na área de avaliação, principalmente o Haladina. Bom, parabéns, mestre Elyson Silva. Não, ainda não é o mestrado, né? Gostaríamos que fosse. Parabéns, eu me sinto muito honrado, doutor Nilton, doutora Denise, pela oportunidade de aprender com esse trabalho, a forma de apresentação é nítida, a apresentação do Elyson, como ele fala assim, como se aquilo fosse parte dele, né? E não algo que ele está simplesmente ali pontuando para cumprir uma formalidade. Parabéns, Elyson. Nossos cumprimentos e agradecimentos por esse avanço científico que você deu e concluiu. E parabéns, doutor Nilton, por incentivar que seus alunos eles possam voar além das fronteiras com as quais nós, orientadores, estamos habituados, né? Seu trabalho merece um reconhecimento especial. Por isso, e claro, por todo o apoio que o senhor deu aos seus alunos. Então, é isso. Um abraço.
Muito obrigado. Vamos ouvir agora a professora Denise.
Bom, corroboro, né, o que o professor Alessandro falou. E, mais uma vez, assim, gostaria de parabenizar o Elyson pela pesquisa e o professor Nilton, né, por conduzir, por guiar o Elyson, né, nessa trajetória, né, e por, assim como o professor Alessandro falou, né, de permitir que ele desenvolvesse, né, essa teoria, né, buscasse uma compilação de teorias que já existem, mas que juntassem elas se adequam perfeitamente, né, ao propósito da pesquisa, né, dessa audiodescrição. Então, né, acho que o professor Nilton tem um grande papel nisso também, né, de permitir que isso aconteça, né, e é isso, assim, incentivar que isso continue, né, então fazer pesquisas com os níveis mais básicos, né, A1, A2, o quanto os alunos conseguem, né, fazer uma pesquisa bem robusta, assim, e bem detalhada, né, de quanto os alunos conseguem desenvolver a partir de uma tarefa de audiodescrição, né, o quanto eles conseguem desenvolver a parte oral, né, talvez até uma parte escrita ali, né, para fazer um script, alguma coisa, comparando talvez com os níveis um pouquinho mais avançados, né, de repente um B1, B2 ali, né, o quanto essa pedagogia pode ajudar os alunos a se desenvolver, né, e o quanto de mediação, de ajuda do scaffolding que eles vão precisar para desenvolver isso, né, e talvez até levar isso para escolas, né, e qual seria o desafio disso, de desenvolver um projeto desse numa escola, que a gente sabe que é um contexto bem desafiador para o ensino de línguas, né, mas, quem sabe, né, trazer isso e essa motivação dos alunos também de trabalhar com alguma coisa diferente, de ver uma produção, porque eu sinto que os alunos, eles têm vontade disso, né, de fazer uma produção na língua ali, né, não só aprender aquela parte de gramática, de vocabulário, né, então acho que seria, assim, uma indicação para futuras pesquisas, mas que realmente, assim, te incentivar, Elyson, a não parar, né, então acho que isso tem que continuar, porque a gente viu o teu potencial aqui, né, como o professor Alessandro falou, parece, né, teria a potencialidade de ser uma pesquisa de mestrado, né, e é apenas um artigo para TCC, né, então a gente vê a tua potencialidade, o teu potencial nisso, né, então que isso continue, né, que essa tua vontade, que essa tua, né, esse teu cuidado na pesquisa continue realmente, assim, então nós como professores, nós conseguimos ver, assim, o diferencial entre os alunos, né, e a gente consegue ver esse diferencial em ti, pelo teu trabalho, né, então, mais uma vez, parabéns, e que isso continue, né, adoraria ver daqui a um tempo, assim, mais frutos disso, né, então, é isso, assim, então, que vocês continuem, né, e mais uma vez, parabéns, e muito obrigada pela oportunidade de poder avaliar esse trabalho, de poder ler, de poder aprender mais também, né, então, agradeço mais uma vez o convite do professor Newton.
Elyson, muito obrigado, professora Denise. Elyson, tens alguma coisa a falar?
Não, eu tenho apenas a agradecer a vocês aqui pela sugestão da doutora Denise, do doutor Alessandro. Eu acredito que realmente eu vá continuar nessa pesquisa, porque o doutor Newton, ele me aconselhou a seguir no mestrado, até no doutorado. O doutor Newton, ele é um bom orientador, porque ele tem as ideias bem mirabolantes, assim, olha, você pode fazer assim. Então, eu tenho todo um apoio por parte dele, e aí eu acho que com ele eu consigo sempre seguir em frente, né? Então, assim, eu só tenho que agradecer muito mesmo pela sugestão e pela orientação do professor Newton. Muito obrigado mesmo.
Então, antes de encerrarmos, mais uma vez eu quero dizer muitíssimo obrigado, doutor Alessandro Tatagiba, doutora Denise Lambert, muito obrigado realmente, porque esse evento, claro, demanda tempo, não é, para vocês lerem o trabalho, se prepararem para estar aqui, e eu sei que tempo é o que nós não temos como acadêmicos. Então, eu vejo assim como com muita alegria, né, esse desprendimento de vocês, essa colaboração, porque não é todo dia. Às vezes a gente entra em contato com um examinador, eu não posso, estou ocupado, estou em férias, estou não sei. E aí eu fiquei muito feliz. Ontem à noite eu estava pensando, digo, puxa, eu tanto trabalho com meus colegas aí, mas realmente eu fico muito feliz, inclusive, mais agora, pelos comentários de vocês, pelas contribuições. Nós vamos conversar com o Elyson, e muito obrigado mesmo. E eu quero agradecer aos que estão aqui presentes online, ao vivo, né? Alunos, colegas do Elyson, professores, muitíssimo obrigado por comparecerem também. E agora nós vamos encerrar. Então, um abração.
Um abraço.
Um abraço.
Poder contar com vocês.
Até
Parabéns,
a noite de
novo.
autógrafos do livro.
Ah, sim. Queremos ser convidados.
Tá bom. Um abraço.
Tá bom. Tchau, tchau. Um abraço.
Tchau, um abraço.